Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Last week on the Worry-Free Retirement, we discussed the concept of how my granddad was able to pull off retirement in 1978 by living off Social Security and his meager pension from Bell South, and how, back in the day, he and other like-minded savers understood something I refer to as retirement cash flow, which is basically making sure that the money one has coming in the front door is adequate to cover the monthly household expenses heading out the back. You see, over the many years that I've counseled savers in retirement, the one truth I've discovered to be worry-free in retirement is as follows. Savers must remember that cash flow is always king. So why is it so important for savers to have a written game plan in place, making sure that there is more money coming in the front door than going out the back? Well, let's find out as we take an even deeper dive into today's topic, Cash Flow is King, Part 2. Well, welcome, folks, to the Worry-Free Retirement. And yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, cash flow king expert and full-time fiduciary, Tony Walker. And before we learn how to count the cost by making sure more money is coming in through the front door of your retirement than is leaving out the back, let me introduce two young lads in the Worry-Free Production Studios who help to improve the cash flow around this place each week. America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orender, along with Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson. Okay, just in case you missed last week's show, Cash Flow is King Part 1, which can be viewed in its entirety by logging on to youtube.com and simply typing in Tony Walker Financial, let's do a quick recap of what retirement cash flow is and how our concept of front door, back door is essential in understanding how to manage your money so it will last as long as you do. First off, remember how you manage cash flow when you were working. Think about it. All of your life, you received a regular paycheck, compliments of the employer you worked for. But when you retired, that regular paycheck with all of those handy-dandy tax withholdings stopped. Now, you're all that's left to go it alone and try to figure out how to turn that tax-infested 401k plan of yours into a monthly paycheck and make sure that it lasts the rest of your life, all the while trying to keep taxes down, fees as low as possible, and insurance premiums down as well. No wonder you're losing a lot of sleep at night. So what are your options for getting a better night's sleep? Basically, there are only three, and that is how to manage this thing called retirement cash flow. First, you got to have more money coming in the front door than going out the back. Option number two, have less money coming in the front door than going out the back, which that's not a good scenario. And finally, the third and the perfect scenario that fits well with our philosophy called Live Well, Die Broke, and enjoying your money before it's too late. That's right. You want to have the exact amount of money coming in the front door as is going out the back. So how exactly is a saver supposed to monitor this front door, back door concept of cash flow as they move into what I call the second half of life? Well, as you're about to learn, there are basically 4 steps you will need to take in order to make sure that you can enjoy your money in retirement without the fear of running out, and it's a cash flow that is consistent with the different stages of life that you will go through. Good stuff coming your way. I'm Tony Walker. You stay tuned. We'll be right back. Did you realize that if you have more than $250,000 in retirement assets, the government could tax as much as 40% of it when you go to take it out? And with current tax rates set to expire in 2025, the taxes you will owe on your 401k could climb even higher. Don't wait until 2025 to see how much Uncle Sam will take of your money. Get a game plan by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
And now it's time for Tony in the Trenches. Hey everyone, welcome back to the WorryFree Retirement. I am Aaron Ornder, and this TNT right here comes to us from Sam in Greenwood, Indiana. Tony, my wife and I purchased a second home in Florida 4 years ago, but noticed that as of late, the cost to keep up the home is going through the roof. Please remind your audience of the issues involved in owning two homes.
All right, thank you, Aaron. You know, folks, one of the most frequent questions I get from savers looking to retire soon is whether they can afford to purchase a second home. Usually, it tends to be in the state of Florida. As you can see from this article, the increasing cost just to insure cars and homes in the Sunshine State is getting out of hand. And while I'm not opposed to my clients purchasing property in Florida, there are several things to consider regarding your retirement cash flow and the possible high costs of keeping up with two properties that many savers fail to consider when owning and maintaining two homes in two different states. There is real estate taxes, property insurance, and you've got property maintenance and repairs that come with owning two homes, and that's just to name a few. So more to the story is this: before ever purchasing a second home in retirement, be sure to sit down and count the cost by performing a thorough analysis of the monthly cash flow needed to maintain two homes, and that you basically are going to have to double or sometimes even triple the amount of money coming in the front door to cover the increased expenses going out the back. So how can we better manage our retirement cash flow? Well, there are many ways to do so, but here are 4 key ingredients to make sure that more money isn't going out the back door than is coming in the front. Ingredient number 1. Remember that in most cases, the very folks who want to handle your money in the financial world comes to your kitchen table with a huge conflict of interest. These folks do not want you to spend and enjoy your money, and thus will probably never understand cash flow because they know that the more money you spend, the less money they get to keep and make on your money. In fact, this article, which we're going to talk in detail about this next week, talks about the idea of advisors charging huge fees to manage your money and how this conflict of interest doesn't serve savers well, but only serves the best interest of the money managers. This conflict of interest is so important, again, that we are going to dedicate some time to it and help resolve these issues so that before you hand over your money to someone, you will know if there is, in fact, a conflict of interest. Key number 2 to making that perfect balance of managing your cash flow in retirement is managing unnecessary costs that are going to increase the amount of money needed to come in the front door to cover the unnecessary costs going out the back. Unnecessary costs such as taxes that you're going to have to pay when you pull money out of that 401k or IRA, taxes on annuities and surrender charges and being tied up with your money, Social Security and not knowing when to take it at the right time, and also flooding Social Security with additional income that will create more taxes. There's the cost associated with fees being charged on those two holding on your money and who are managing it. And yes, of course, the unnecessary insurance premiums that some of you might be paying while you're trying to protect your home, car, life, and your health. Key ingredient number 3 to balancing the cash flow that's coming in the front door and going out the back. That's right, I created this years ago. It's called the 3 halves of life. It was covered in my book written nearly 20 years ago called The Worry-Free Retirement. And basically what we're talking about is this fact. As most clients, and we've got a ton of clients at this age range that fall into what I call the second half of life, as they start moving through the second half of life, they will start spending less and less money, which should give you more permission to spend money during halftime. Halftime is that time in life when most savers can truly enjoy their money before it's too late. And finally, the 4th key to managing this cash flow in retirement is making sure you have a written game plan. Folks, again, at Tony Walker Financial, our game plan clearly shows you where your money's invested and how that money will be deployed over time. The game plan is what's going to give you confidence in knowing that you've got plenty of cash flow to cover the expenses that come up and also help you figure out how to make financial decisions that will come up in retirement that nobody's even planned on. This idea of having a game plan with a well-trained retirement planning firm to assist you is what we like to call
Sleep insurance.
So what is the typical savings that might come from honing in on all these unnecessary costs discussed earlier? The taxes, fees, insurance premiums, all of this money that's going out the back door that could be leaving unnecessarily. And how do we at Tony Walker Financial help our clients sit down and count the cost? Good stuff coming your way. Let us get out the whiteboard. I'm Tony Walker. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. We will be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. As we understand why cash flow is always king, I would be remiss if I avoided one of the greatest examples of too much going out the back door and not coming in the front door to cover it, and that involves our nation's debt. And as this article reminds us, the path we are on is certainly unsustainable, to which I would reply, thanks a lot, Captain Obvious. Earlier in the show, we talked about our trademark concept of having retirement cash flow that includes an equal or greater amount of money coming in the front door as opposed to heading out the back, something we call
Sleep insurance.
So what is sleep insurance? Well, before I go to the whiteboard and explain this example, if you're just now joining us, we've been talking about a couple, and this actually happened. It's happening more and more frequently, quite frankly, where they're thinking about having a second home in another state. Now, again, we're not picking on Florida. We're not telling you to buy, not to buy. That's not the purpose. We're just trying to help you understand cash flow and how expensive it is, especially in Florida, to do things like insuring one's home or car. In fact, check out this article. It says that according to the Insurance Information Institute, as of January 2024, the average annual full coverage premium in Florida, this is to insure an automobile, is almost $4,000 a year, 55% higher than the national average. Here's an article that came out at Investment News. It says home insurance premiums heading still higher. And I love this. A lady down in the body of the text quotes this. She says, if people start moving out, in other words, insurance companies quit insuring homes because it's so expensive to insure them and there's so much risk for insurance companies, she says this, somebody will eventually come in to insure those homes in Florida. But here's the key question. She says, at what cost? It goes on to say that in the state of Florida, the average cost to insure a home down there is $11,700, more than 4 times the national average. So let's take a look at this. And again, if you're just now joining us, let me set the stage. We've got a couple, 67-year-old couple, and let's first go over their existing assets and the cash flow and how wonderfully their life was under control with plenty of money coming in the front door as opposed to going out the back. So basically, they have a paid-for home of $400,000. They have savings of $100,000 that they could use for travel, liquidity, emergencies, etc. I suggest leaving that alone. They have a brokerage account that they moved over to us. Now, this would be your stocks, bonds, mutual funds. We put that with Schwab. It's completely liquid. It's set up to try to grow a little bit more, but there's $100,000 of after-tax money there. And finally, their 401k, which they had recently moved over to Tony Walker Financial in our split IRA concept. That was about $700,000 for us to manage. Keep in mind, folks, depending on what we do with the split IRA concept, the money that stays with Charles Schwab that we manage is a whopping 0.8%. That covers everything. That covers our fees to pick the funds for you, our distributions, our tax withholdings. That's everything, generally about half the industry average. And then finally, this was what was so cool. between their Social Security, he also had a pension, and any savings they were taking out easily, okay, $6,500 a month. So they were basically able to live on the $6,500 a month. Most of this was after-tax money. Occasionally they might need some money out of savings, or we could send them money from the IRA without penalty, but their cash flow needs, the money going out the back door on a regular basis, again, they're going to spend more money than this for different things, but on a regular basis was about $6,500 a month. Social Security and pension pretty much covered everything. I'd pretty much call that worry-free. But that's okay. They came to me and they said, hey, Tony, we're looking at a home in Florida. We've always wanted to have a second home, okay? And it's around $500,000 that we're looking at. I said, okay, fine. My first question out of my mouth, and folks, this is what a retirement planning specialist does. I don't question why they're doing it. I'm going to start questioning from an economic standpoint, which was, how are you planning on paying for this? Well, they said, well, we thought about borrowing some money, but we didn't realize interest rates were that high. I mean, first of all, to borrow that money, you're not going to be able to borrow the full $500,000. You're probably going to have to liquidate your savings. So there goes your emergency account. Then you have to borrow money at 6 or 7% or whatever's going on. That's going to be a big old monthly payment. Cash flow, see what's going on here? More money going out the back door. We're not saying I'm opposed to this, but you got to start thinking about this. All right? Well, then they said, well, I tell you what we're thinking about doing, Tony. You're always talking about that darn tax tumor and these tax laws expiring in 2025. What if we took our entire $700,000, which it would take that much after taxes, what if we paid the taxes on that, which would net about $500,000, okay, and just paid for this Florida home with cash? Could we do that? And I said, well, of course you could do that if that's what you really wanted to do. Obviously, you could save the fees that we're charging on you, et cetera, but let's talk about cash flow. And they said, well, what cash flow? We're going to have this thing paid off. I said, you're not thinking about this home in Florida. So again, as we just got through discussing, homeowners insurance down there is about 4 times the national average. If you decide to be a Florida resident for tax purposes, you're going to have higher car insurance. You may be going to pay a property manager. Again, you've got all these issues with 2 homes. You've got maintenance. You've got all these expenses. So what's going to happen is, what these folks were just not thinking of is the additional cash flow needed. Listen, even if they paid unpaid cash for it. So folks, the point with the Worry for Retirement, where we're so unique at Tony Walker Financial, number one, I've got a lot of experience in the world of retirement planning. I've been doing retirement planning specifically for over 20 years. I've met in person with nearly 20,000 people in that time. We have over 3,000 clients. I've overseen more than 5,000 written game plans. We know retirement planning. Folks, it's not always about the numbers and trying to grow your money and shuffling the stuff around like a deck of cards. It's all about cash flow. This is why we say cash flow is king. So if that's you right now, if you're sitting there saying, Tony, I didn't realize there's so much involved in understanding cash flow before I start making all these major financial decisions in retirement, well, then we need to talk. And we've made this really easy to do. We call it the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. So to take advantage of talking to me, the owner of the company, just simply log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that little red box. We're going to arrange that free phone call with yourself and myself. Then after we talk, if it warrants, if I think I can be of help, we are going to meet in person. That's right, no cost, no obligation, at either Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky, to put together this free retirement game plan, something you've never seen before. I should know that because I created the software that generates these game plans. So log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or if the internet's not your thing and you want to schedule some time, simply call the toll-free number on your screen. Well, does the Bible have anything to say about buying a second home in Florida? Actually, it does. And man, am I going to need a cup of coffee for this one. Tony Walker with the Worry-Free Retirement. I will be right back.
Our employee spotlight today shines brightly on Miss Shanna Zachary. Good morning, Shanna.
Good morning, Tony.
And when did you start at Tony Walker Financial?
February of 2019.
Well, we appreciate all your years of work here. Explain the main duties on a day-to-day basis you provide for our clients and prospective clients.
I typically answer the phone calls as they come in, and I handle all scheduling for you and other fiduciaries.
And doing a marvelous job. But what do we have, 560 first appointments, I think, in 2023, roughly?
Yes.
So, and you did most of those. So thank you very much. Now, what would you say, now that you've been here a while, what is the most enjoyable part of your work here at Tony Walker Financial?
It is honestly having face-to-face interaction with clients, getting to know them on a more personal level.
And moving forward, I think what we've decided to do is we want you to be that main appointment setter. So I would just encourage anybody watching to ask for you, and you're happy to set up. Also, a little bit about the free fiduciary phone calls. That's been a success. Tell folks just a little bit about how that works.
Okay, so for people who would rather speak with you by phone, they just call the office, and I'll get that on your calendar.
So normally, Tony would be hosting a client appreciation event this year. But since we're in the end times and all, he's opted instead to give out some rather interesting merchandise. He ordered a few thousand of these cutouts, and we here at the office don't really know what we think of them, but as long as he's happy, everybody's happy. In fact, he was so excited, he decided that mailing these out just wasn't good enough. No, he wants to hand deliver every single one of them personally to each of his clients, and of course, get it all on camera. Sure, Tony, I don't have anything else to do with my afternoon. All right, first stop, a longtime client of Tony's, the Graves. I somehow doubt the Graves were expecting a visit from the little man in the sweater vest today, much less two of them. Okay, I guess they look like they're taking it well. It kind of looks like they're excited. It's hard to read, but, maybe Tony knows his clients well enough to know that they'd actually like this. Oh, and I guess that's it. All right, we say our goodbyes, we hop back into the car, and it's off to the next client. Only 2,499 left to go.
Looking to roll over your 401k? Then log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and learn just how easy it is to roll over and safeguard your 401k. Do it today. When you boil down this thing we call a worry-free retirement, it all comes down to one element: cash flow. Making sure that the money coming in the front door equals or exceeds the amount of expenses going out the back. And in our study of a retirement cash flow, it might come as a surprise that one of the biggest expenses heading out the back door of retirees are the expenses associated with housing. Whether it's the cost of renting, the cost to own, deciding to maintain two homes, making a decision to downsize, and yes, even the option a 90-year-old in our office the other day mentioned, moving into a facility that's going to charge him $5,000 a month to live in.
Heavy.
Regardless of where you choose to live in retirement, there is always a cost. The question is the cost too much for you to handle? Interesting that the Bible is very clear on this notion of housing and how we must count the cost in anything we do so that we don't accidentally create too much money going out the back door that, of course, is coming in the front. Check it out, where Jesus makes an example of this in Luke 14:28, where he is comparing the idea of following him and the cost associated with such a decision to one sitting down to build a tower and not understanding what's involved in that cost as well. The result? Not only can the unplanned not finish what they started, but worse yet, said non-planner looks like a fool to others who see that he wasn't able to finish what he started. To which you might ask, well, who in the world would be so foolish, Tony, as to not count the cost before building a tower? My response? Unfortunately, me. You see, 10 years ago, I had as my heart's desire to build the home of our dreams, something affectionately referred to as a timber frame home. Upon committing to this project, little did I, nor the contractor I employed to help me, truly understand how much money it would cost to erect such a structure. The result? Halfway through the project, I almost ran out of money. Fortunately, we were able to bring this project to a completion without losing all my money, but man, talking about some scary moments, and yes, the thought of the embarrassment of a little man in a sweater vest failing to complete what he had started. And maybe that's you right now. You're in the middle of planning a project that you really haven't thought through in as much detail as you should. If so, or maybe it's dawned on you that you have stockpiled way too much money in that tax-infested 401k plan, with no plan on how to get it out at the least amount of taxes and fees, as well as making sure that you don't run out of money in retirement. Well, if that's you, let's turn to the late, great Dick Walker for some sage advice right now.
Just slow down.
In other words, just step back, think about what you're doing, make sure that the thing you're thinking about trying to build is truly something you can afford, and know this truth, friend, with any project, whether it's downsizing, building a home, renting, or buying a second home in Florida, with any project, there are always costs involved that can negatively impact your retirement cash flow. And in order to avoid the embarrassment of running out of money in retirement, you're probably going to need a financial advisor in your corner who understands all the cost involved in keeping more money coming in the front door as opposed to heading out the back. So never forget that to be worry-free in retirement, cash flow is always king. And that at some point, my friend, you need to take the advice of what Jesus shared with us in Matthew and remember to always count the cost. And that's some good news you and I can take to the bank. Amen? Well, assuming you currently do not have someone trained in the art of retirement planning and retirement cash flow, an advisor you can meet with in person, someone who understands how to properly count the cost, my question is, why not? My name is Tony Walker, and for nearly 40 years, I've made it my life's mission to help more and more savers worry less and less about money. And at no obligation or cost to you, we can set up something we call the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call to simply find out what you're up to and how we might be of help. And here's how easy it is to take advantage of 10 minutes with myself to learn more about your situation. Just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and click on that Let's Get Started button. That information is going to be confidentially sent to our offices, and we will arrange a phone call for you and I to talk. Now, if after we speak, if it looks like we're going to be able to help, we're going to set up another free appointment for a second opinion at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. Again, log on now. There's no cost or obligation. Maybe you're sitting there saying, Tony, maybe I'm not interested in logging on the internet, but can I just call you guys? Absolutely, 24/7. If we're not in, we have live operators that can take your call. Just dial the number at 877-499-9255. Well, we've enjoyed today's program. Next week, an interesting show is we're going to talk about this whole notion of conflict of interest. And who has a conflict of interest anytime they're giving you financial advice? Good stuff coming your way next week, but you remember between now and then, if all else fails, you be worry-free and make it a good one.